Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the virtual licensing meeting today. We will start by doing a round of introductions. So my name's Councillor Amanda Pinnock. I'm chair of the panel. Councillor Watson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Councillor Michael Watson. I'm one of the elected councillors for Denby Dale Ward. Councillor
Davies.
Good afternoon. I'm Paola Davis. I'm one of the elected members for Almondbury Ward, and I'm on the panel today.
The council's legal representative.
Good afternoon. I'm John Chapman. I'm head of legal services and I'm acting as legal advisor to the panel today.
Okay, the licensing officer.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Anwar Butt. I'm the licensing officer and I'll be delivering the report this afternoon.
The applicant, Mr. Broadbent.
Hi, yeah, I'm Chris Broadbent. Again, work for Three Fiends Brewer.
Lovely, and we've got the objectors. So, Miss Fowden, are you with us?
Yes. Hello, Jane Fowden here.
Thank you. We have Mrs. Nicholson.
Hello, Heather and Steve Nicholson here.
Thank you. Thank you. And Miss Young Davies.
Hello there, yes, Carol Davis here.
Thank you, everyone. So just to remind everybody that this has been webcast and recorded today, and we'll start by going through the agenda. So item 1, that refers to this morning, myself and my colleagues undertook a site visit at the Three Fiends in Home Firth in association with item 7. So further details of that will be discussed at that item. Minutes of the previous meeting, which took place on the 27th of April. I was the only one present from the panel, so I can confirm. I apologise. Councillor Davies?
I was there too. I can second the minutes.
I apologise. Are we happy to approve those minutes?
I think yes.
Thank you. Any interest to declare? Councillor Watson? Councillor Davies?
None.
Lovely. Admissions of the public. This has been webcast. Any deputations and petitions?
None received, Chair.
Public question time. Any questions for us?
None received, Chair.
Lovely. Right. So we'll launch straight into why we're here, and it's the application for grant of premises licence for the Three Fiends, situated at Brookfields Farm, 148 Millmore Road, Meltham, Home Firth. Can I, just before I ask the licensing officer to come in and outline the application, I should explain that this application was originally heard on the 27th of April. However, we decided at that stage that we needed to undertake a site visit, so we had a better understanding of the details presented in the bundle of papers. So it was necessary to do that, and as I've said, that took place this morning. Therefore, the hearing was adjourned on that occasion so the site visit could happen. Since that time, at the last hearing, we had Councillor Iredale with us, but we've now lost her because she has retired and Councillor Watson has taken her place. So he's here with us to decide on the application with myself and my colleague Councillor Davies. So I just wanted to make that clear as to what happened on the last occasion and what's taken place since then. So can I begin by asking the licensing officer to outline the application, please?
Thank you. So a summary of the application is for the grant of a premises licence for the Three Fiends Brewery, as already been explained. Application was first applied for on the 3rd of March 21. Licensing Department received the application for the grant of a premises licence. Application has been submitted and a copy is attached to Appendix A to the bundle. The Three Fiends Brewery currently benefit from a premises licence for off sales, and the hours for licensing are Monday to Sunday, 8 AM to 2200 hours. This licence was, that's Monday to Sunday. The licence first granted 28th of August 2015, and a copy of the licence is attached to Appendix B. Licensable activities applied for on this application are films, Friday to Monday, 12 to 2300 hours, and also the consumption of alcohol both on and off the premises That's Friday to Monday, 9 AM to 2300 hours, and Tuesday to Thursday, 9 to 1700 hours. In respect of the consultation has taken place. No representations have been made from the responsible authorities. However, I will pick up on a point with relation to the planning authority when it comes to the relevant section. However, concerns were made from residents. We initially received 4 representations. However, one of those 4 was more planning related, and that person didn't come forward with any issues relating to the licensing objectives. So, to be clear, we have 3 ratified objections based on the licensing objectives, and they're attached to the bundle. And they are based on all of the licensing objectives: public safety, prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance, protection of children from harm. In addition to the above information, the premises have also had the benefit of 4 temporary event notices in the period of the last 12 months, with the exception of 1, of which that was cancelled due to the current restrictions and lockdowns. So that was of no fault to the applicant. That information, in relation to the objections, is attached to Appendix C. In preparing the report, extracts from the licensing policy have been added to this bundle, as have the Secretary of State's guidance under the 182 guidance. That's attached to Appendix D. I'll just briefly cover the consultees and their opinions. All of the consultees have been consulted on. I did mention that there was a slight irregularity with regards to the planning authority, and I explained that at the last presentation. Essentially, this application vests within the Peak District National Park, and that hadn't been picked up until later on in the consultation period. However, I've personally been in contact with the Peak District. I've personally discussed this matter with the planning manager, who had no observations as far as this application is concerned. And given that the hearing date has been rescheduled to today, so it's the second hearing, we still have had no objections based on the licensing objectives from the Peak District. The only matter that they've got a concern with is planning. And for the benefit of this panel again, I will just briefly touch on what I did do last time, and that is just to make the distinction that this panel is for licensing. It doesn't discount planning. Planning will be dealt with by the Peak District, and notwithstanding any irregularities with it. A discussion about planning today. In determining the application, decisions that can be made are the grant of the application with appropriate conditions. Also, it could be excluded from the scope of the licence any relevant licensing activities, or the application could be rejected. The application should be judged on its own merit and based on the balance of probability, and the panel obviously will take note of the statutory guidance and licensing policy which are attached to this. That sums up my outline of the application, Chair.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. So you mentioned that there were a number of temporary events that took place at this premises. One of them, I think, was cancelled because of the COVID. Have you received any complaints or any negative comments about these events that took place?
I do believe that one of the objectives has made reference to the temporary events, or at least one of the temporary events. However, as part of the consultation, I would always speak to Environmental Health. They're not aware of any complaints being lodged, and West Yorkshire Police are not aware of any complaints in relation to those matters.
Thank you. Earlier on, you mentioned the distinction between planning and licensing, and I think you also sort of indicated that some of the objectors have relied on things that may not necessarily be a licensing issue, but maybe a planning issue. Are you
Correct.
able to, at this stage, sort of distinguish to make it clear, you know, what are licensing objectives and what planning might be looked at in respect of what's been said in the objections?
I will do my best, Chair, bearing in mind I'm not a planning officer. From a licensing point of view, then we would be looking at things such as prevention of crime and disorder. So there were mentions of behaviour by people that might have attended events in the past. So anything that references behaviour of people that have attended the licensed event. Another one would be public nuisance. So that would be noise related. So if an event was taking place and there was noise that was causing a disturbance, that would have a bearing on the licensing objectives. Protection of children from harm. So the impact of alcohol or licensable activities having an adverse effect on children or young persons. That would be another sort of relevant licensing consideration. In terms of planning, there are things that have been referenced here, like the fire department. The fire department are a consultee. They haven't had any objections. They have actually come back to us and said we don't have any objections. There are highways and environment agency issues that have been referred to. They are not licensing objectives. They would be more to do with planning. There's been issues raised to do with the bridleway and activities that might take place on there, and access and egress from the bridleway. They would be more planning related issues. Off the top of my head and the best of my knowledge, to give a flavour for the distinction between the two, that's how I would best describe that, Chair.
That's really helpful, thank you. Councillor Watson, do you have any questions?
It may not be one for Mr. Butt, but I was just interested to know the timings that are sought are 9 till 2300 hours on Monday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are 17 hours. Friday, Saturday, Sunday are 2300. Is there any specific reason we know why Mondays are 2300?
Really could.
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to go back to why we initially went for the premises licence for the temporary event notice in August?
Is that Mr. Broadbent?
Cancelled because events got
Question to
cancelled.
Mr. Butt, please.
Is that Mr. Broadbent? Can I jump
Yeah.
in? Sorry, I apologise.
Yeah.
That question is directly for the licensing officer. If he can't answer it, then he needs to say, you know, we can pick that up later on with yourself. So I'll come back to you. I'm sure my colleague may put that question to you later on, but this is specifically for the licensing officer. Go ahead, Mr. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Butt, did you hear that?
Mr. Butt, are you with us? Is he having some technical issues? I think he's having some technical issues there, isn't he? Councillor Watson, is that a question we can come back to?
Yeah, we can save for later. Yeah, that was all I had.
Councillor Davis, did you have any questions for the licensing officer?
I think my questions were similar to the ones that Councillor Watson was going to ask, so I'll wait for that response as well.
Okay. Well, I think we should move on then to the applicant. So, Mr. Broadbent.
I just think there might be some technical issues, Chair. Just checking.
Do that was to me. Why on a Monday? Hey?
Mr. Butt, are you with us?
Sorry, Chair. I think we'd had some technicalities with the audio. We couldn't hear you. I am with you, yes. So to answer Councillor Watson's question, we've only received the application. I don't know the distinction between the hours. That might be better answered by the applicant.
Hello? Do you want to hear from me, Chris?
Yes, please.
Right, so when our temporary event notice in August got cancelled, we spoke to licensing and pub beer gardens, you could still drink in them at that time. So a licensing officer said to us, why don't you apply for a premises licence And then that gets around temporary event notices for doing, so we could still have events in our beer garden. So that's why we applied for this license. The reason for Mondays is purely for, we don't plan on having a bar here every day of the week. Our intention is to carry on doing temporary events, but have a premises license, so if it rains or get cancelled, we can still have those events. So the reason for Monday is just for bank holidays.
So thank you for answering that, Mr. Broadbent, but would you like to make representations about your application and about your business so we have a better idea of what your intentions are, please?
Right, so we're already a brewing facility. We intend to carry on our brewing facility. Our intentions for having a bar up here, a tap room, once or twice a month in the summer when it's warm enough. The films that we asked for, again, that's the licensing officer suggested, just tick anything that you might want to do. We're not bothered about films, so you can cancel that. That was just, I think, a nice to have, possibly, if we want to do have a film night, but we're happy to get rid of that. So I don't think there'll be much difference to the amount of temporary. I think we've had 15 temporary event notices in the last 3 years with no issues or complaints. Again, on a weekend it'll be every now and again.
Okay. Can I ask a couple of questions that might be able to help you along?
Me? Yeah.
Yeah, have you finished?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just so that we can fully understand what the offer is when I say help you along. So clientele then, what sort of what sort of customers do you envisage, that you will be attracting? And what sort of numbers do you think you're likely to attract as well, to give everybody an idea of what it might look like?
Right, so we had a temporary event last month. We had 2 sessions on the Saturday. We've got 15 tables and a horsebox bar at the top on the track at the top. So I think we had 70 people in the afternoon session, 70 people in the evening session, and on a Sunday we just had 1 session. Again, it was about 60 people. The people that come are families. We have policemen, firemen, all local, teachers, our neighbours have been, just supporters of the brewery from the local area.
Okay, thank you. So you will have received the bundle that we're all working from, and in that bundle there's information in there from various people objecting to your application for a number of reasons. I know the licensing officer has outlined the distinction between what's licensing and what's planning, but do you want to make any comments on what's been said?
Only that none of our neighbours have ever raised any of these with us, and as I've said, some of our neighbours have been to a few of our events, and as far as I was concerned, enjoyed them. As far as I was aware, I've enjoyed them. As for litter down the track, we've never noticed any, or been told of any. But what we did after our last temporary event is at the end of the night, we had a licence till 11, but we were finished. Most people had gone by 8:30. We stayed long till 10, and about 10 o'clock we went down and checked the track for any litter. Not any noise issues. We've never had any noise issues, and we've had rock bands playing in the outbuilding up here, and we've never had any complaints for noise. So litter and noise, no one's ever said anything to us, or I'm aware that have complained to the council. There was, I did notice someone said that we're not even from the community or live round here, but I'm born in Honley. Matthew's born in Meltham. His family's lived at his farm for 80 years. So we're a bit upset about that we don't do much for the community. We work with the local scout group. We've raised funds for Meltham Memories with the Meltham Beer Festival. Last summer, when we had the worst financial time of our lifetime in the brewery, we found money to give the council a noon for an initiative we did in the centre of Meltham. So we bought a table and bench for people. So yeah, we were a bit hurt that we don't do anything for the local community.
Thank you. I'll move on to my colleagues now. Councillor Watson, do you have any questions?
No, I don't at the moment. Thank you very much.
Councillor Davis?
Yeah, I just had one question regarding sort of capacity. So the application you mentioned the talk about the capacity of the tap room. Can you just clarify what the sort of size and numbers of people that would be?
Well, I think the maximum we've had here is about 200, and that was in August bank holiday a couple of years ago. But we use the outbuildings as well. But I mean that was a one-off. We had bands playing.
So sort of as part of your offer, what would you expect your sort of routine attendance to be?
Routine attendance, currently we've got 15 six-seater tables and benches. So let's see, what's that, 90?
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Licensing officer, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I don't, Chair, no.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on then. So we have 4 objectors here today who have raised objections about this application. Each of the objectors have provided written representations, which are located at pages 45 to 53 of the bundle. The panel has had an opportunity to read those written submissions prior to the hearing today. So really, this is for the objectors. So we've had a chance to read those. Is there anything else in addition you would like to add to the written submissions, particularly after hearing from the applicant? What I'm mindful of is repetition of going through it again. We have seen it. It is available for us to have a look at. So I'll move to the objectors then. So Ms. Fowden, is there anything additional you'd like to add now that you've heard from the applicant?
Hi, yes, please. Just to respond around the complaints, I have tried to talk to Chris on a number of occasions, mainly around their drainage and the state of the land, our land, as a result of their drainage. Now, some of that has tried to be improved because the Environment Agency have been involved, but I see that some friends have got together, they've started a brewery, and organically it has grown. There's Examiner articles from 3 or 4 years ago saying that they've made a massive investment of £50,000, and I just think it's grown to maybe beyond what they first planned for, because they didn't think about the environmental impact. They haven't thought about the public access and in terms of parking. The where we are means that people do generally come in cars. There are small lanes. They don't provide a car park. Brewery waste is hugely, wasteful in terms of water, and so that means it's a family farm, and it was built as a family farm, not as a brewery. So although it's great beer, it's nice having a good beer nearby, but essentially it doesn't fit the surroundings. And I would also say that the numbers have regularly been, before pre-lockdown, around 300 people. And it's great, there's a good family atmosphere, but it doesn't mean that children are playing ball and frisbee and it's going over walls and they're climbing and then, finding litter. And I also would like to comment that no comment about Three Fiends not investing in the community. It was more about that they don't live on site. So therefore the investment there is, I think, different than when you live in a premises, that you're running a business. They're essentially using the farm buildings. And I would also say that the beer garden that Chris talks about isn't a beer garden at all. It's a field with sheep in, and although they might move the sheep when it's a beer garden, essentially it's not a beer garden. And I think in terms of public safety, the farm buildings really is an entertainment space. I don't know what checks there are, what public liability there is in terms of public safety. I think, I think they just need more guidance in terms of setting up a bigger business and maybe up an unlit, road with lots of rocks and running water is probably not the best place. So, that's sort of in a nutshell where I'm coming from.
Can I come back on that?
Not at this stage. We need to let the objectors put their submissions forward if they want to, and then you'll have an opportunity to come back. Right. So the next one is Mrs. Nicholson. Is there anything additional to the written submissions that you've put forward after hearing from the applicant today?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Pinnock. I think my husband just wants to come in with one thing and then I will say something else. Thank you. Here he is.
So this is Steve Nicholson. So personally, I mean, it was very interesting to hear the applicant say that they don't envisage there being more events than there have been in the past, because obviously that's not clear from the licence application, and the licence application would allow them to serve, till 11 o'clock at night, 4 nights a week. And I don't know whether or not that's very usual for somewhere to have a licence that allows them to be open at those sorts of hours when they're not actually, when in fact they're only having occasional events. I guess some of the, you can put up with things, you accept things when they only happen, 15 times over 4 years. You put up with the fact that the parking's a bit dangerous and a bit difficult, and you might have people, vomiting just outside your house and odd bits of rubbish thrown in. There's a huge difference between that happening 4 times over 15 years and the prospect of it happening 4 nights a week. I accept the applicant saying they don't intend to have it 4 nights a week, but if the license allows them to do that, then presumably it gives no guarantee that they wouldn't in fact do it. So that's my point that I'd like to make.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I'll just come in with things. Couple of points. I think the applicant's reference to the temporary event held under lockdown and the figures cited cannot be taken as indicative of future events. I think it is an inappropriate measure. I think the lack of previous complaints has been about maintaining good neighbourliness and in a sense being supportive, but as others have said, this has grown to some extent in a topsy-turvy manner, incrementally through its own success, and there is now a risk of it bringing all sorts of issues to bear that I have listed in relation specifically to the licensing objectives that are just the product of things growing. Large numbers of people coming down, a very, very poorly surfaced, unlit lane late at night. I do challenge, actually, the comment made that people had largely gone by 8:30. They had not largely gone by 8:30, or at least if they had, there were some very noisy smaller numbers that came down that lane much later, of all the objectors. My family lives closest to the junction. We are hugely aware of the parking and the traffic dangers generally at that junction. We were hugely aware of that junction becoming an informal taxi stop over and above the use of it for parking around that last event. The premises license being suggested as a way of getting around inclement weather and hosting things on bank holidays. This is offering the possibility of something just growing and growing. The environment hasn't got a voice itself. I really believe we need to think about the protection of this vicinity in relation to what is being put forward, and the issues of crime and disorder, public safety, public nuisance, protection of children from harm, not so much on site, but adjacent to site. I have no concerns with our neighbours' concerns. So those are the points I would like to make about the intensification of business activity that this licence would give.
Thank you. Moving on to the last objector, which is Ms. Young-Davis. Is there anything additional to your submissions you would like to make after hearing from the applicant?
Hello, Councillor Pennant. Yes, please, I would. And again, I feel the need to respond to the questions why there haven't been previous formal complaints. And I think it's basically that we really, as a family, my husband and myself, we really like the applicant. And as neighbours, there's no way we would have wanted to complain, even though it was very, very unpleasant at times. And yes, we attended, and yes, we enjoyed the event. It's a wonderful location, as I'm sure you saw this morning. But that's quite different. Coping with it just occasionally is quite different. The thought of it being, 4 nights up to 2,300 hours and people not leaving until midnight, And, although I know Chris is saying they only want to do it every now and then, but unfortunately we can't, the thought of such an open licence going through and it growing and growing is something we really have to stand up and say, just really feels quite impossible for us, when we talk about numbers, yes, the last event must have been very limited, but I know one event I was at, I did a head count of 250 people, which is wonderful in terms of their popularity. It's not wonderful when you've got that number of people funneling down that little lane. And again, after this very recent small event, what suddenly became obvious was that the crossroads, as I think my neighbour just mentioned, has become a taxi rank. And my husband and I were sat outside for just like an hour and a half that evening, and we're down in the courtyard. We're quite away from that crossroads, which my neighbours Heather and Steve are very close to. And I was aware of at least 6 to 8 groups, and that was up to 10 o'clock of them leaving. And there was, the sort of things we're talking about. There was a woman retching very loudly and a male friend mimicking this. And people are in the countryside. They're down an open lane. They totally forget. They seem to totally forget, And I think any impromptu taxi rank has got the usual potential for disturbance and noise if you've got a lot of drunk people grouped together. And I think lastly, really pleased and that obviously Chris and colleagues, picked up the glasses after the last event, but I do understand that my neighbour still had 2 in their garden after that very last weekend, I'm trying not to repeat anything else that's there, but I think I've focused on the things that really are responding to points raised today. It's a really regretful position for us, and I just do fear that it's grown and grown. That's all I've taken now. Thank you.
Thank you for the objector. Thank you for the comments made there from the objectors. So, Mr. Broadbent, you now have an opportunity to respond to the points that have been raised. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, the one point about using the field, in the 15 events that we've had, we've used the field once. I wanted to make that clear. I can't remember all the points, to be fair. There was planning points there. The road leading up to it, we had Kirklees come out and have a look at the road, and they said the road's fine. There's a footpath.
Yeah, I mean, just to remind you, right, so some of the comments that were made were more planning, but there were specific ones about the number of times you're likely to hold events during the year. I think that was a specific one that people sort of raised, and yeah, I don't know if you want to comment on that. I know you mentioned it earlier.
I mean, there's never going to be an event Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We work. We've got 2 young families. We come up to the brewery. We brew during the week. We most of the time drop our kids off at school and pick them up. So the events would be possibly on bank holiday weekends. That's why we applied for the Monday. Friday we only put in case we want to do a Friday night, which we're probably unlikely to do. So it's possibly going to be Saturday, Sunday, when the weather permits, in some months.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we haven't received any, or there's no one here in terms of any other responsible authority to make any comments. So I will move towards closing the hearing today, and to give everybody an opportunity really to sum up briefly, if you want to, any points for the panel to consider. So can we start with the licensing officer?
Yes, Chair. We've discussed the application at length. As a licensing officer, the main thing that really shouts quite loudly to me is, and with the greatest of respect to the interested parties, that does seem to be a lot of sort of confusion in terms of this panel between planning and licensing. I've heard, despite trying to make a distinction, I've heard, and it is respectfully, matters relating to drainage, environment agency, highway type issues, structures of buildings. Those are important issues. I totally understand that, but for the purpose of licensing, they would be dealt with separately. And I'd like to focus on the licensing objectives. One thing that the applicant may maybe want to come back to is dispersal of the attendees when they attend larger events. I'm not quite sure I picked up on what his plan was for dispersal, which might ease some of the concerns of the residents. Other than that, Chair, I don't have any further comments to make, really.
Thank you. So we'll move to Mr. Broadbent.
Sorry, say that again.
So what I'd like you to do is sum up. Is there anything particular you'd like to say to the panel as we close? The licensing officer has made a suggestion there that if you can, comment on how you're going to deal with the dispersal of your customers when they leave, because those seem to be some of the key concerns raised by the objectors.
Again, we've had 15 of these events so far. Some of the events, 50, 60 people turn up, depending on what time of year it is. People arrive at 12 and stay for a few hours. Some people stay a bit later. We've had licenses till 11 o'clock most times at night, and I've said previously, a majority of the time people have left earlier. So in the July one that we had last year, we were finished at 9. There was no one here at 9 o'clock, and even though we had a license till 11. The people that come here are families, local families, people we know, middle-aged people. I'm 44, So it's that kind of demographic, 35 to 60-year-olds that we get here. I disagree that most of the people that are leaving are drunk and causing a nuisance.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move to the objectors. So Ms. Fowden, is there any, would you like to sum up, say anything, something very quickly? As a closing remark?
No, I think that that everything has been covered. I mean, it's just, I think the boundaries of the licensing I understand, but I think that we're caretakers, and I think generally in Kirklees we should look after the whole picture. So I think it can't be seen just in an isolation. So that's all I would say. That I find that frustrating. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Nicholson?
I endorse the previous statement, and I also feel that the criteria against which we're being asked are to some extent constrained, and I think they're set up for different sorts of settings, a more urbanized environment. I think the terms of the license are so vague. We've heard from the applicant so many times that it will be maybe and probably not, and there ifs and buts, and there's nothing to control and curb and restrain the scale of this activity and its potential impact upon the environment.
And yes, this is Mr. Nicholson. If I can just come in on that, I mean, maybe it's outside the remit of this meeting. I'm not sure, but what's not clear is why, if they are only going to have another 15 or 20 events in the next 4 years, why move from applying for individual temporary licenses to one which, even if at the moment they don't intend to do it, would allow them to be serving alcohol till 11 o'clock at night every Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday. But thank you, that's my point.
Thank you.
Do you want me to answer that?
No, thank you. And then
I think I answered it earlier, didn't I?
You did. And then finally, Miss Young Davis, would you like to sum up?
Hello there. Yes, I mean, I guess I just want to say that, never have we said that it's most of the people attending the events. I think, sadly, there are always going to be a proportion of people, especially a brewery event, that do get tanked up, and unfortunately, that has been our experience. It's not easy to speak up against people that you've got high regard for and respect their business. But unfortunately, the issues go beyond that. There have been, as I've cited in our report, in our objections, really, so many of these incidents that it would be a nightmare to have this on an ongoing basis. And I think lastly, I noted that the key aspect of the hearing is to ask if, the licence holders can be in a position to uphold the 4 licensing objectives. And, it's my belief, unfortunately, no matter how much they want to do that and their intent, that a lot of this is out of their control, simply because of this location, simply because most of the issues happen when people leave and are coming down this lane. So I think that's it. And again, the thought of that, yes, it may not happen Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but the thought of it happening potentially up to 4 nights a week, again, as much as it's been said it won't, the terms of this licence is so wide that that's why we feel the need to object to it fully. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So as a panel, we've listened very carefully to what's been said. We now need an opportunity to go away and consider our decision. So we will break now so that we can do that. When we return, we would ask all the applicants to watch the webcast for our decision, and a letter will, of course, be sent out confirming what the decision is in writing. So we'll now move to...
Okay, could I just make a final comment, please?
Yes.
I'm mindful of the response from the interested parties. and I do understand the points that they're making, and it may seem that the panel are being insensitive in some ways, or the process is insensitive. Just to sort of draw a line and sort of try and offer some assurance to people, there are two things that people need to remain in their minds. And number one is planning. The planning will have a consultation period process, and a lot of the issues that have been talked about today, environmentally, drainage, highways, they will be covered. And it's not that we're not dealing with it, it's not legally applicable or appropriate here. And the other thing is, from a licensing point of view, should the license be granted today, this is to the residents really, that there's always a review process. There's always a review process, and the responsible authorities remain responsible authorities. So, for example, if there were crime and disorder issues going forward, the police are always there to lodge complaints. If there are noise-related issues going forward, there is environmental health, and the objectives always have to be satisfied. We would work with complaints, should that be the case. If we were unable to resolve those issues, there's always an option to come back to panel under the licensing review. So everybody needs to be very clear on that, that there's always a review process going forward, and that would be based on factual evidence and documented evidence, hopefully. That's all that I've got to say, Chair.
Thank you for the clarity there. So myself and my colleagues will now move to another room so we can discuss and make our decision. Thank you, everyone. So we'll
to you, Chair. You're on mute.
Thank you. So the panel have been asked to consider the application for grant of premises licence in respect of the 3 fiends situated in Home Firth. This morning at 9:30, the panel had an opportunity to visit the site, and also the panel have heard submissions made by the licensing officer. We've heard from the applicant and also objectors. There are a number of issues that came out of that, particularly in relation to the distinction between the licensing objectives and also planning, which the licensing officer clearly identified and dealt with. So we have considered what's been said today, and the panel have come to the decision to agree the grant of the licence, but on a limited, curtailed basis, particularly in light of what the applicant has said. So we've agreed to grant the alcohol licence between the period Friday to Monday, 9 AM to 9 PM, Tuesday to Thursday, 9 AM to 5 PM, and in line with what the applicant has said during his submissions, to remove the film element from the application. In addition to that, and I know it's also been alluded to in the application, we expect the applicant to put up notices clearly indicating the request that customers leave the premises in a quiet and orderly manner. And if there are any issues with the grant of this licence, or any issues in respect of the premises, and this is for the objectors or anyone else who has an interest in this, issues can be raised with the licensing service, and a request can be made for a review of that license. So thank you everyone for coming along. Thank you for your input, and have a nice day.